Miranda Devine is a
I
rock
know.
star of Australian journalism, and she joins us right now from where she is based at the moment, getting ready for one hell of a big year. We all knew 2020 would be big, but Miranda, did you know 2020 would be this big? The middle of a pandemic, all the rest of it here. So good to have you on the show, mate. How are you?
Great to see you, Paul. And who could have possibly predicted what's happened this year? It's just anybody's. Last year, Donald Trump was cruising to a pretty easy win, you would have thought. And now, everything's up in the air.
Now, you've written beautifully, both in the United States and here, about the stunning hypocrisy that is existing about the allegations in and around Joe Biden. And at the very heart of them, I always think the best way to expose bias in the so-called straight media is the stuff they don't talk about, what they refuse not to engage with. And for weeks and weeks, Tara Reade, former staffer from the 90s, there was a podcast where she spoke for an hour, gave the allegations in absolute detail. Nobody would touch this, and eventually it's come to the fore. But isn't it amazing? The same media that talked about the Access Hollywood tape all day, every day, nothing to see here on Creepy Joe.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? It's, believe all women for the Democrats, the left feminists, as long as it's a conservative who's being accused of being a rapist, like they did to Brett Kavanaugh last 2018, the judge who was just completely pilloried, good family man, impeccable reputation. And you remember that terrible testimony by Christine Blasey Ford, baseless allegations accusing him of rape and sexual assault 30 years earlier, absolutely no corroborating evidence. And yet you had all the Democrat women, all the feminists, the actresses, the Me Too people like Alyssa Milano running around saying, believe all women. And that became the mantra for the Me Too movement until now. Suddenly, it's not believe all women. We heard Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, the senior Democrat, saying, oh, I believe Joe Biden.
It's ridiculous. I mean, now in America, it's pretty obvious that, as you say, the path to the president being re-elected was the economy. 7 million jobs had been created. Things were really chugging in that direction. Stock market at 30,000. Pretty obviously now, the best part of 25, 26, 27 million people unemployed. From a political perspective, do you think that there are parts of the Democratic establishment or the big media that want to continually obsess about the coronavirus pandemic? They want to pretend that what's happening in New York is happening everywhere in order to stop the conversation going anywhere near an election or America even being able to launch a recovery?
Well, of course, I mean, all they have is a sleepy guy in a basement in a house who has cognitive problems, and now he's got this Tara Reade problem. And so they're not doing very well. So obviously what they want to do is pin those 60,000 plus deaths on Donald Trump. They want to hang every one of them around his neck. And already you've seen Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer start up the beginning of another, nascent impeachment process with their inquiry into how the pandemic was handled by Donald Trump. And, he knows, he can smell it from a mile off. He's been through it with the Russia, Ukraine, the past attempt to impeach him. While they were trying to impeach him at the end of last year, that was when the coronavirus outbreak was getting out of control in China. And although Donald Trump says his eye wasn't on the ball and he wasn't distracted, of course he was. The entire government, the entire White House was bound up with trying to save him because he was under mortal threat from this ridiculous hoax of a complaint. And so, they now, instead of taking any culpability, instead of saying we shouldn't have wasted so much time and effort on that sham impeachment process, they're now saying, oh, Donald Trump didn't act soon enough and so on, even though he actually went against the advice of his medical experts, Deborah Birx and Anthony Fauci, and closed the border with China on January 31st. And that was something that Scott Morrison followed the next day, and also Jessica Ardern in New Zealand followed 2 days later. that proved to be crucial for Australia and New Zealand in keeping the virus out of our countries. And in America, it was a little bit. I mean, they stopped those flights from China, but then of course we know the virus was already there, probably circulating from December.
Well, now they're trying to pretend that, it's not a real travel ban because 40,000 people have come back. They're American citizens returning to their country, not, Chinese tourists. It's nonsense. Now, also...
No, but also, Paul, yes, but there was unprecedented quarantining. That hadn't happened, I think, since World War II. Those people who returned, many of them were locked up for 2 weeks, just like, tourists are in Australia. Just to make sure that they didn't have the virus. So, look, yes, a lot of people did come in, but that idea of closing the borders was so opposed. Yeah. Joe Biden himself was calling Donald Trump a xenophobe for doing that. And the World Health Organization and China, they were all against it as well. Smart elite opinion was against, they say, viruses know no borders, which is just nonsensical.